Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Passion to Profession Cyber Careers Journey event. I'm Emily Calandranis, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our third Spirit Week event of the week. We hope that you're having an awesome time watching these events, and we're excited to hear where you're watching from. So please feel free to utilize the comments box, share where you're watching from, as well as say hi to our awesome presenters. We're going to go ahead and get started with some very quick introductions. Today, we have four amazing folks that are part of the cybersecurity community. Some of them you may know, some you're going to get to know better today. So our presenters today is going to be Amelia Weeding. She's a staff embedded security engineer. Susan Paskey is going to be the threat hunter representation. Victoria Doring is the president of InfraGard, and Tiberius is the principal consultant for Coalfire. We're absolutely thrilled to have them join us today. And for this event, we have a very special host. We have Jen Langdon, a cybersecurity engineer for Cyber Skyline, who you know from doing all of those awesome challenges in the NCL competition. So I'm going to go ahead and get off stage in just a moment and bring Jen on stage. And Jen's going to go ahead and navigate us towards this really awesome conversation with these wonderful individuals. Hi, Jen.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to talk with our special guest today. Thanks for that introduction. I'm really excited. So we'll be talking about kind of three different main categories today: software engineering, digital forensics, offensive security with our special guests. It feels like, Thanksgiving and cybersecurity, right? We have three different pies for dessert. So I'm ready to dig in. First, we're going to have Amelia come chat with us. So Amelia, there you go. Hello.
Hello.
Amelia, please share your career path, how you got to where you are. And I think we all really want to hear, what are your roles, responsibilities as a staff embedded security engineer, and you'll have the stage. So I'd love to hear more. If you have questions, everybody, please feel free to put them in the chat. We might not get to them right away, but would love to have and hear them as you're listening to Amelia. So go ahead, Amelia, take it away.
Yeah, so glad to be here. Thank you, Emily, for kicking us off. And thank you, Jen, for bringing us all together. And definitely a shout out to Kiwi. You know what you did. So as you said, my name is Amelia Weeding, aka Ask, as you see here on the screen. And I'm currently a staff embedded cybersecurity engineer where I spend my days working on security of hardware and embedded products. If you know what those are, talk about that in a minute. I was born and raised in the Chicago suburbs. I grew up in a small town called Plainfield. It was destroyed by a tornado. You'll learn about that if you Google it. And I just always had a knack for fixing computers. Not because I was just good at fixing computers, it's because I was always blamed for breaking the computer. So I had to learn how to fix the computer to prove it wasn't me who broke the computer. And then I started learning how to fix my own laptop hardware with soldering iron because the power jack kept breaking on it. If you were around back then, the power jacks on laptops were a huge problem. There's a reason the MagSafe lock or plug exists. But Circuit City kept sending my computer back more and more broken, so I just learned how to repair it myself and just kind of did that off to the side while I attended Augustana College in Illinois from '05 to '09 and got a BA in physics. But the side tech work, I always just kind of did my own side tech work. I got a job at an AT&T call center, and I did customer service for smartphones. So we would take on phone calls and teach people how to use their new found smartphones because these things were brand new at the time. And then I was bored of my job. I really didn't like being at a call center. So I asked my friend who worked at a data center in the town that I was working in, our college town, and I was like, "Hey, could you get me a job at your data center? It sounds like more fun than where I work." And so about a week later, I had an interview and was offered a position in the contractor role. And then it took about a year, and I was able to interview and land a full-time position at the company I am currently with still to this day. So that was 14 years ago. Got settled into life, got settled into doing data center operations, picking up the phone, fixing things on computers in the data center in which I was working and remotely around the world. And I started gambling with Bitcoin at home because we worked second shift, third shift, first shift, all over the place. And so on third shift, started gambling with Bitcoin, and there was this little coding box in the browser for JavaScript. And I learned, oh, hey, I actually know how to code. I'm not losing money, but I'm not making money. I'm matching the martingale curve. Learned a lot about all sorts of statistics because of that. And I started asking around at work for more relevant jobs that I could do to bring this skill into work. So I started automating the setup of our Windows systems, checking what's installed, deploying new software, that kind of stuff. And that kind of moved into me going one night, hey, I wonder if I can automate my ticket management job. So we wrote daemons to reach out to the ticket management platform. It took a lot of networking, though, the whole time to get people to buy in for all these different ideas that we had to bring together. And in the end, we had 6 of us that built a team together to automate most of the ticket management at the data center so that tickets would automatically forward to the right people if they weren't able to self-heal. And from there, my one of my first bosses at this job actually called me up and asked if I wanted to go learn full stack CI/CD pipelines and build out these training platforms that are used by our customers by our technicians that interface with our customers. So I learned how I automated my job again, and it deployed these training pipelines. That took me about 3 to 4 years to learn, and that's where I learned PowerShell. If you're interested to learn what you can do with PowerShell, if you go to my GitHub, AASK42/particle Tetris, you can play Tetris in PowerShell on anything, including a Mac or Linux or Windows, whatever. Um, that was just me saying, hey, I need to learn PowerShell. And so I wrote Tetris in it to teach myself something. And in that time while I was doing that, I also found this conference called DEF CON. I'm sure quite a few of you in this audience know what DEF CON is. And at DEF CON, I fell in love with these badges that were all shiny, all these things that you see around me. So at DEF CON 23, I walk in and I see people with all these badges. Actually, I think it was this one right here. Might have been the record. This might have been our second year there. Yeah, it was a record. That was my first year, was the record. And anyways, I just fell in love with all these shiny badges. And I decided I want to learn how to make my own. And so me and my friends outside of work, mind you, this is all outside of work, self-driven. I go, hey, I want to make this battery that can measure these add-ons performance. And that's where we got these 2 badges right here. And we have a second generation of these badges we ended up building. And then after that, we ended up building these with True with the Whiskey Pirates. It was great to learn how this stuff works. Turns out I was also learning how to hack embedded systems at the same time. And I was also getting bored at work and looking for my next role. And so I started asking around and held up one of these devices in a meeting with a leader who said, how would you like to build that for us? Like, I was like, oh, really? He's like, well, on the cybersecurity side, let me get you talking to people. So I networked again and ended up in a role called security by design. And in that security by design role, we wrote tooling to automatically detect flaws in the build stacks for things like this, for things that go into cars, for things that go into semi trucks, that go into tractors, ships. They go into coffee cups now. If you have an Ember coffee mug for some reason. And so what we started learning how to do really was dig deep into these systems outside of work and then started asking around at work, who's digging into these systems? And one day it was like, oh, that's the neat part. It's you. We took on the role, and me and my coworkers started our team 4 years ago as 2 people, and now we're up to 6 people, and we spend most of our time looking at our company's embedded platforms from a threat actor point of view. So they're all connected to the internet. They all have various services that run on them, and they all have things that need to be secured so that they will operate correctly for all parts of the customer base and the business. So, and now in my current role as a staff embedded security engineer, I'll actually architect these assessments against big systems as they come in, as the company is preparing for releases, as things are already on the shelf and somebody notices something, wants our team to look at it. Another thing that we do is part of our job is run an event called Cyber Tractor Challenge, which is how I actually ended up here today. So Kiwi was one of our students in the first Cyber Tractor Challenge a few years ago that was hosted by our employer. And now we are our own nonprofit. So every year we actually host 25 to 30 students in Iowa to actually hack on farm equipment, which is a lot of fun. We teach you how to do it. We get you on the equipment, and you do sign an NDA though. So that's one part about this job that's a lot of fun, is once you go white hat, you sign a lot of NDAs. But yeah, that's me in 8 minutes.
That was amazing. I want to share a couple things. So I went to DEF CON and I got one of my first things. So we went to the soldering village and spent a lot of time. And it's been an amazing interest in mine. I've tried to like steal my dad's soldering iron, and I was like, this doesn't quite get the job done. So it's on my Christmas list. But that's
Get yourself a
amazing how
Pine
like
Sol or a TS 101.
perfect. Thank you so much. This is great. Everybody take notes. This is the tools you're going to need. So I love how like your current role kind of originated to some degree like here, like
It
doing a
did. It
hobby.
actually didn't just kind of originate here. It completely originated with my hobby becoming my job.
Yes.
And now I've learned all about how you move code from your private code base to work.
So like what do you love most about, what you're working on now, and maybe like where are you going to next, do you think?
Um, I really like working on the bleeding edge of what's coming out next. I like being able to look at the systems that are on my workbench and be able to say, hey, I know that there are these different attack surfaces we need to look at. Here's how we build the tooling to do it. And right now, when I started this role, I didn't think I was going to be able to automate it, because if you were keeping track, I automated my first job, I automated my second job. Now I'm on my third big role, and I didn't think I could automate it. But where I think we're going, which is where we already are, is using AI to automate a lot of the tooling steps that you end up futzing with. Because one of the hardest parts about getting caught up in these kind of toolings is getting the IDE set up. How do I even build the thing that talks to it so I can start poking at it? That barrier of entry is dropping right now. And I see that with vibe hacking moving into the future, yes, that's a real term. Y'all can giggle as much as you want, but vibe hacking is a real term now. There are agentic vibe hacking AI robots. Look it up. I think that's where we're going, and that's what I'm most excited to be moving towards, is learning how do you defend against that? Because we don't really have a playbook for this yet. We're developing the playbook as the attack tooling makes it to the internet.
Yeah, kind of like building the ship almost as we're flying in it a little bit. I've heard
Mhm.
that analogy to some extent. Thank you so much, Amelia. We'll bring you back on a little bit later. We have some lightning questions. But up next, we're going to have Susan is going to talk to us a little bit about threat hunting. So see you later, Amelia. Come on stage, Susan. Hello. So
Hi.
Susan, again, let us know a little bit about your career path. How did you get to where you are now? And of course, kind of some of your role responsibilities now as a threat hunter.
Yeah, totally. So thank you so much for having me here. And
Yeah.
kind of like other stories, I was really technical to start out in my family. My dad was in the Air Force, and he repaired flight simulators for them, and also worked on like arcade cabinets, and was just a real big techie himself. My brothers were also very technical. My older brother was like the webmaster for his high school, and then when I went through the same high school, they're like, hey, let's just give the next passkey the website to take care of. So I was managing that. Was a server admin for the yearbook server, and things like that, starting out pretty early. And then I went to college, and I knew I was going to go into computer science, and I said, I'm going to be a programmer. And then they said, well, to be a programmer, you have to get through Calc 3. And I said, what else you got? And they said, well, here's a network security administration emphasis that you can go through. So as I was going through my bachelor's, I went into that emphasis to have network security. And they're like, hey, here's this class on forensics. And I remember ordering the books for the class, and it was Brian Carrier's File System Forensic Analysis, the first edition that came out in like 2005. And I remember just as soon as it came in the mail, it was before classes even started, I sat down and I read it like cover to cover. Um, it was just amazing how the file systems work and how you could do forensics on it, and how things that are deleted aren't really deleted. And then I remember sitting in the class, and the professor had all these spare hard drives around, and he was explaining to us that, the hard drive, like the way that they function, if you were to run a human hair between the spinning drive platter and the read head, that tolerance is so low that you can't run a human hair under it and have the device still work. And I'm sitting there in class with my long hair, and a bunch of guys with like their really like high and tight or like short hair. So I pull out one of my hairs and I start basically flossing this drive between the head and the spinning platter, and I'm like, it's still reading. And then I do another hair and another hair, and I was testing that what was known, or what was thought to be known to be a fact, that you can't run hair between a platter and a head. And it took up to like 4 hairs before it finally started like catching and having read errors and stuff. So like validating some of those things that are known and like running that hypothesis, even in the forensic class, just to validate what you think you know when you do forensics, and kind of proving that back to the professor was really fun. And then during my last year of college, I started doing tech support for a small business and like gaming PCs. I worked for Dell in a call center for a minute, and that was really fun. And then after college, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get a forensics job, and I tried to start applying out to there, and they're like, you don't have enough experience. So I knew some people that were in firewalls, and I worked in a Juniper call center for a little bit and worked on firewalls, and then I got hired to do firewalls again and firewalls again, and I just kept having all these recruiters come to me for firewalls and network security. That's what my degree emphasis was in. I kept trying to go into forensics. They're like, oh yeah, we'll hire you on as the firewall engineer and then let you go into forensics later, and it wouldn't come through. Or I'd start digging through the firewall logs, and there were some places where I'd get really curious and be like, hey, what's going on with this traffic going through the firewall? And in some cases, they're like, oh yeah, go ahead and dig and take a look at that and go hunting through that data and tell us what you find. And then other times I would find things and they'd be like, we need you to stop looking because we have regulations where we have to report that. And we don't want to have to keep reporting the things that you're finding. It's a lot of paperwork. And at that point, I'm like, oh no, I need to work for a serious team and a serious job. So I kind of moved around the country a little bit, away from my family and away from learning on technical things with my family. I kind of missed that vibe. And back in the day when I first started at the Juniper call center, I had gone out to my first DEF CON. 17 is up here somewhere. And then I took a bunch of years off, and I was like, man, I should really get back into going to DEF CON and just kind of like having that vibe of like learning from other people and learning together. I decided, there wasn't a DEF CON group in the area, so I spun one up. And then getting to know the local community and everything, they said, hey, here's this other team that's hiring to be incident response, where you can actually do forensics and you can actually go in and do threat hunting and those things. So I joined that team, and starting out brand new, they're like, oh, here's this data source. We're going to give you these logs. We don't think you're going to be able to find anything in them. And I went through and I found a lot, and I started doing that same, just messing around and finding out, like, where they didn't think that certain attacks were possible. I went out and tried to prove it. And then I would take a look at what the logs would look like after that, and did a lot of documentation about, hey, this is how you investigate it. Here's what it looks like if you do X to this system, then the logs are going to look like this. And here's what it looks like during a normal authentication flow. And this is what it looks like when somebody's doing something weird, like I'm logging in from my coworker's laptop or from my coworker's cell phone and using that as multi-factor, and just things like that, and just kind of messing around and finding out and getting those results. In doing incident response, you're kind of looking at what happened in the past and responding to an incident, and then being a threat hunter, you're a little bit more proactive, looking for those things that haven't fired alerts yet. But they very much use kind of like the same skill set, where you're going out and you're digging, being able to translate the logs into what actually happened. Because sometimes the logs can look like they're saying one thing, but then they could be not necessarily logging every step that happened along the way, or there are some logging systems that it sounds like one thing happened, but when you dig in a little bit deeper, it's actually something else that happened. And being able to understand those technical systems and everything is a really important skill.
You've mentioned a lot of things that I really love, and some things that really got me interested as well. In cyber, my first experience in a forensics class was like, wow, I didn't know things were completely deleted. Like, that was also my initial point of like, I really love and am interested in this. And I think I wish more of this was shared in high school and more widely across our country. I think people would really find it fascinating. But like, what do you really like about your role right now? Like, what's your favorite thing that really still lights you up inside?
Kind of like the different ways that like the same issues will keep coming up over and over and over again. Being kind of involved in tech as long as I have, like people want us to think that it's these new attacks and these things, but it's the same like hygiene stuff with like a different twist. And it's like, oh, it's that attack again, but style points because you did it a little bit differently, or the attacker did it differently. So
it's a good point, because I think, sometimes when we're learning things, we're like, oh, well, this is old material, and this is, things are always changing all the time. And you kind of brought up the point that like sometimes it's still the same old run-of-the-mill stuff. So thank you so much, Susan, for sharing your experience. Again, you'll be back on later. We have some lightning questions for everyone to go through. And if anybody has questions, of course, you're welcome to add them to the comments. And if we have some time at the end, happy to weave those in. Up next, we're going to talk with Victoria. Victoria, I'm very interested to hear about your experience. So if you could just talk to us about your career path, how you got to where you are now, and maybe what your roles and responsibilities are currently. I'm sure our listeners would love to hear it and love to learn from you. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen. So I grew up in Southern California and have always been very interested in security in all facets, including social engineering, physical penetration testing, et cetera. I remember once when I was a kid, I was doing a tour of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena. And while we were waiting in line, I was playing with the little punch-in key code on the door and discovered that the code for that door was the room number. And that got me really thinking about, how insecure a lot of facilities are. I also started out with a recording studio. I've always been very into music, and I couldn't afford to hire an IT person. So that's kind of where I got my feet wet with servers and RAID and all that type of stuff. Which led to things like data recovery and forensics on drives when things went sideways. From there, I went on to be a systems administrator for a captioning company, which we did a lot of satellite communications and real-time captioning for companies as well. And then I made a move to Vegas, which really helped shape my career. Started working in forensics and security for a large corporation that has offices globally, as well as for casinos. And when I worked for the casinos, I really got a lot of exposure to things like ATM jackpotting and attacks against gaming networks, counterfeit currency, that types of things. And I got heavily involved with an organization called InfraGard, which is a partnership with the FBI for critical infrastructure security, which covers all 16 domains of critical infrastructure, which is finance and healthcare and water, power, health, et cetera, as well as agriculture. And through that, I forged a lot of partnerships with a lot of law enforcement folks in the Secret Service and FBI and Metro and all that sort of thing, and really tapped their experience for forensics to learn a lot more about that. I went on to work for a government contracting company where I was doing physical penetration testing for the Department of Defense. So I would fly to all number of different military bases all over the place and basically ensure that their facilities were secure. I also got heavily involved with things like PCI compliance assessments, high trust, HIPAA, FedRAMP, et cetera, as I ran an entire team of assessors that did that. I went on to work for a company that manufactures ATMs and cash exchange kiosks for gaming and hospitality. And I was able to draw on a lot of my experience with counterfeit currency detection and stuff like that as well in that role. And in that role, it was great because I got to build a security team from the ground up. When I started there, I was the only security person. And so I had to kind of identify what the risks were so that I knew, how to staff up and how to budget and how to build relationships between departments and with executives in a very security resistant culture, which has been invaluable to me in my career. Bridging that gap and learning how to communicate technical ideas to non-technical people is something that's very important, really at all stages of your career, but especially when you get into the management side of things. So I try to volunteer as much as I can with different organizations. This is the first time with this one, but I've volunteered for an organization called Cyber Challenge, as well as for several other educational programs as well.
Yeah, I just really want to highlight because I think that's really important about the communication, with other people who are less technical. So I just want to highlight, like, you were able to transition from something like really technical that you're working on to now you're, trying to, adapt to the business side, right? Which is kind of a little more people focused. So what do you really like about your job now? Like, do you still get to, still dive into the technical stuff? Like, does that still fulfill you, or is this, other part where you're leaning towards?
Yeah, I'm still very passionate about the technical side of things. I try to keep my skills sharp, even doing management stuff, by having a home lab. So the home lab that I have set up is honestly better than a lot of enterprises. Um, it's all,
That's
10,
amazing.
10 gig backbone between the servers, and I've got multiple virtualization nodes and that kind of thing. Um, and even taking additional classes, like, I'm a lifelong learner. I think that's really important for anyone in security, is that, it doesn't matter what cert you got or what degree you have, you will never stop learning, because things constantly change, and there's always something new on the horizon. So most recently, I was taking a class specifically about AI for small business and government. And, for one of those assignments, even though it was more of an overview, I built an entire enterprise stack that, had Cloudflare and N8N workflow automation and OpenAI integration and chatbot integration for communicating with it, et cetera. So definitely very much still passionate about the technology side of things.
That's amazing. That's a great lesson, I think, for everybody, listening, that, even if you do transition to, more of a managerial sort of role, like, you can still keep your skills up, and it's really important too. So thank you so much for sharing everything you've shared so far, Victoria. But we have more later because you'll be coming back for some lightning questions. But now we're going to have Tiberius come on the stage and share all about their journey, career path, how you got to where you are now, and, a little bit about your role and what you're working on currently. So take it away, Tiberius.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, like Jen mentioned, I'm Tiberius. I'm a principal consultant at Coalfire, working mostly as a web app pen tester. As you could probably tell from my accent, I'm originally from the UK, but now I'm totally US based. Growing up, my dad was a software engineer, so I was exposed to computers and the internet from quite an early age. But my first taste of cybersecurity somewhat wasn't really anything fancy. It was basically just a kid trying to cheat at a video game. So this was when video games didn't sync save files over the internet. So I basically tried to reverse engineer the save file and give my character some more items, some more gold, basically, and sort of cheat my way through the game, which, kind of worked, kind of didn't. But that's kind of curiosity and wanting to understand how systems worked, but also how to break them, was the start of sort of, like, it's developing the hacker mindset. And back then, just growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, there weren't sites like Hack the Box and Try Hack Me like there are now. There was pretty much just one, and it was called Hack This Site. It's basically the original hacking challenge kind of thing. And you didn't spawn boxes like you now do on Hack the Box. Everyone was just hacking the same sort of web app challenges at the same time. But it kind of got me interested not only in web app security, but also web app development. And so during my teenage years, I would learn how to code PHP, for example, and develop actual web apps. And back then, I didn't actually realize even then that you could work in cybersecurity, that you could make this a career. So when I went to college, I just studied computer science, thinking, well, at least I know I want to do something with computers. And luckily for me, the university I went to was the only one in the country at the time that had any kind of information security or cybersecurity department. They actually had a completely separate department from computer science, just dedicated to information security. And so at the end of my first year, we were told, oh, well, you're doing a major in computer science, but you can add a minor in another subject if you want. And one of those options was information security. And so for the final 2 years of my degree, I was doing computer science courses, but I was also doing information security courses. And I found that I was enjoying the information security courses more than just the regular computer science. So much so that after I graduated, I went back to the same university and I did a master's in information security as well. And then after that, I sort of, I got a little cocky. I was like, well, I can try and find a pen test job right away. That didn't work out. But I found a company that was basically writing auditing checks they had like an auditing scanner that you would deploy on boxes within a customer environment. And it would run a bunch of checks to see if those boxes were configured properly. And so I got a job there writing scripts using a language called TCL, which is awful. And so a few months later, I was just bored out of my mind. And I discovered that the same company were developing another sort of product which had a web app interface. And I was like, well, has it been security tested? And they were like, no. And so I was like, well, can I just like test it on the side maybe? And they were like, yeah, sure. And so that was sort of my first real pen test. So I tested the app. I found a bunch of vulnerabilities in it. They were really happy. I even developed like a little custom tool for them to sort of deploy and scan the same application as they developed it to try and find more things. And the original job was only a 6-month contract. So when that was up, they basically were like, well, we just can't afford to keep you on as a full-time employee, but we can keep you on like a monthly rolling contract. And that was all right. But I was like, okay, I've been in cybersecurity for 6 months. Now I can be a pen tester, right? So still kind of cocky. But luckily, I actually found a company that were hiring junior pen testers. And bear in mind, this is still back in, this is back in 2012. So you could still sort of trip and fall into a pen test role without any experience. But I got that position and it was sort of a trial by fire. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I really didn't have many networking skills at all. But that actually taught me like one of my biggest lessons was you can't be afraid to ask questions. So anytime I was on site with a senior pen tester and they found something really cool, I'd be like, oh, can you show me how you discovered that? And can you show me how you exploit it? And they would like sit me down and they would teach me. And that was really, really useful. And that's pretty much how I learned. I learned on the job by sort of just forcing myself to ask the questions that, I may have been embarrassed to ask otherwise. But about a year into that, so I've been testing everything. And if you're a junior pen tester, I recommend you just try testing absolutely anything: networks, mobile apps, thick clients, social engineering, whatever. Because it'll tell you what you like doing, but also what you're good at. And I realized I was really good at testing web apps, mostly because I'd been a web app developer, so I had that sort of technical knowledge. And so I figured, okay, I want to specialize in web app pen testing. And I also saw that there was sort of a value of going deep into a subject matter, becoming a subject matter expert, as opposed to sort of just spreading yourself over a wide range of technologies. And at the same time, I also saw that, applications or companies had traditionally been thick clients, so just installed on everybody's computer. And the industry was shifting away to web apps, where you had like a centralized server. Everyone accessed the application via a browser because everybody knew how to use browsers now. So it was sort of intuitive how to actually use web apps. And web apps have only just got more complex, right? Browsers have added new security features, frameworks kind of just exploded, APIs became a real backbone of modern web apps. Even like mobile apps these days, most of them are just web apps in disguise, right? So even if they have a native UI, a lot of that communication with a server is done over HTTP. And so my current role now, I'm a principal consultant at Coalfire, as I said. Day to day, I still just do web app testing. That part really hasn't changed much, but I'll handle sort of kickoff calls with clients. So we demo the application, confirm the scope, make sure we have access to applications. That's like VPN. Maybe we need to actually VPN to the company network. Maybe we need accounts set up for us. But most of my week is taken up with security testing. So like the focus is on exploring the application, testing for various security vulnerabilities, and then exploiting them. And with web app pen testing, it's a little different to regular network pen testing. It's less about getting a shell. It's more about what kind of information can an attacker access or even modify in the application without permission. And then reporting usually takes up around 1 day a week on average. But thankfully, with modern reporting engines, they kind of save you from a lot of the really, really boring manual parts, writing long-winded paragraphs about stuff. So a lot of the time I'll spend writing a report, but it'll be definitely less as time goes on and we get sort of better and better reporting engines. I also spend some time doing research and tool development. The main tool I use is called Burp Suite. It's really, really good. And recently they've just sort of really upped the level of customization and extensibility. And that can really sort of transform pen testers' workflow. And obviously I also use AI in subtle but secure ways. So we don't send customer data anywhere, but there's definitely stuff I use where I'll get the AI to sort of generate scripts, and then I'll review the scripts faster. But yeah, that's me.
I love that you mentioned Burp Suite because that's one thing I haven't gotten into yet. Actually, web app is something I want to dip my toes into, but I haven't quite got there yet. But what do you currently like about your job now? Like what really, like when you wake up, you're like, I can't wait to do this.
Yeah, I think with web apps, it's every single web app is different. So you're sort of presented with almost every week, it's a new challenge. And so it keeps things fresh, definitely, as
That's
opposed
engaging.
to
Yeah.
exactly.
That's fun. Yeah. Speaking of fun, we have our lightning questions. So I'm going to need everybody on the stage. We have a couple questions, about 5 to 6 questions, and we have about a minute, not a minute, one sentence response is kind of what we're looking for, maybe 2 sentences for this first question. And again, everybody that's listening, you're welcome to add questions to the comments, and we can bring them up and have them sent to our panelists here. First lightning question: why do you think cyber is important? Amelia, are you ready for this one?
Yeah, I think hackers gonna hack, and we all need to eat.
There you go. Susan, why do you think cyber is important?
Yeah, it's important for having trust in like commerce at all anymore at this point, and all the data that moves around.
Good point. I like that answer. Victoria, why do you think it's important?
For me, it really comes down to, like Susan said, trust, and definitely privacy. I think, we live in a world now where we give that up a lot to companies for free services, and really understanding cybersecurity and becoming a trusted either resource or service that values privacy and protects things adequately is really important.
Cool. Tiberius, I'll let you wrap this one up, but I'm going to let you start the next one. So why do you think cyber is important?
So I prefer the term for this question, at least, information security, because I think that kind of sums up what the world has changed. Information is just everywhere, and that's what we need to protect. So that's why cyber is important. We have to secure people's information now.
Okay, I love it. Next is, what is the number one myth that keeps being perpetuated in the security community right now? So Tiberius, take it away. What do you think?
Yeah, there aren't 10 million open cybersecurity positions, at least none that are going to get filled by juniors or even people with 2 to 3 years experience. There are definitely openings. Unfortunately, most companies these days want people with like 5-10 years experience.
Okay, Victoria, number one myth that keeps being perpetuated.
Further to Tiberius's comment, they want that 5 to 10 years of experience in the technology that's only been around for 2. I think one of the biggest myths is, security through obscurity, right? Is that if I just, obscure something, it means that it's going to be private. And that's definitely not the case.
Good point. Susan, number one myth.
Yeah, I think that the AI is going to take all the SOC jobs. I think it's going to create more SOC jobs, honestly, going back and finding all the incidents that it could have potentially caused.
Oh, interesting. Amelia, okay, number one myth.
I think I'm aligned with Susan, except a little bit further to the extreme, in that people keep saying that AI is a fad and that we're in a bubble and that this technology is gonna run its course and we're all just gonna move on with our lives. That's not the case. Not the case at all. And if you can learn how to wield the tool that we have, then it becomes effective. But I think the biggest myth right now, when I tell people how effective AI is in the cybersecurity realm, is wait, you can do that with embedded systems? Yeah, it's called an offline ML model.
We'll talk a little bit more about AI in a second, but our next lightning question, Susan, you're going to take this one first. What is something you've worked on that's made you like super excited and, super proud, super fulfilling?
Yeah, there was one time during a major incident that I was working on and going through and digging through stuff. I was working for a vendor, so it was specifically working with one of their tools. And I was like, hey, if we fixed this tool for our incident, it would also fix the product really well for everybody else. And they ended up implementing the changes that I suggested into the tool globally now for other incident responders.
Awesome. Victory. Okay, speaking of victory, Victoria, what is something you've worked on that's made you excited or proud?
I would say probably the most exciting was being able to help the Secret Service both capture and prosecute a foreign national that was jackpotting ATMs across the country.
All right, let's go. Way to go, Victoria. I love it. Tiberius.
Yeah, I think I'm most proud of the sort of content creation side, which I didn't mention in my sort of 8 minutes. But yeah, I have a YouTube channel and I really enjoy sort of teaching the next generation of cybersecurity. So that's what I'm most proud of right now.
Awesome. Make sure that you put that in the comments because it is a great channel. Amelia, something you've worked on that's made you excited and proud.
So a few years ago, I started this nonprofit Cyber Tractor Challenge where I get to actually guide the team that runs the show there, but it's just a member of a group of cyber challenges. There's Cyber Truck Challenge, Cyber Auto Challenge. What I'm saying is there's an NDA, and I can't tell you what I did that I'm most proud of for another year and a half to 2 years, if and maybe never if I really want to keep my kneecaps. But ultimately, I'm really proud that we are able to be invited to arenas that normally we wouldn't ever be allowed in as hackers. Because if you look at the history of hacking, putting us in front of, well, I've never been there, but like, for example, an F-35, like whoever is out there hacking the F-35 knows that it's special, that they are there because Matthew Broderick got on a screen and scared Ronald Reagan.
I love it, Amelia. Thank you. I'm trying to think of how to segue to this next question. Okay, something, because it's not exactly related. They're all lightning questions here. What's something you've had to change about yourself to be better at your job? Victoria, you're going to take this one first. Something you've had to change about yourself.
I would say, that's a tough question.
I know.
I would say the way I communicate with people, honestly, is the major thing that I had to change and learn and adapt to. Because with what I do, I deal with a lot of non-technical people, which is somewhat removed from a lot of folks in cybersecurity that work on teams. But a lot of what I do dealing with, especially law enforcement, they are not technical people at their core. And so changing the way I communicate has probably been both the most difficult and most important thing that I've changed.
Perfect. All right. Thanks for sharing that, Victoria. Tiberius, something you've had to change about yourself.
This is going to sound like I've just copied Victoria's answer, but sort of people don't realize pen testing is such a customer-facing role, so you have to be able to talk to customers and not just be like, "Ha, I pwned your application." Like you have to actually explain to developers, like, this is how you fix it, right? You can get excited about hacking, but you also have to sort of tone it down when you're sort of talking to customers about, okay, and now this is how you're going to repair it.
That's a good point. Amelia, something you've had to change personally.
So this has been a career-long journey for me to change communication styles because I did not grow up as part of a family that did group activities outside of the family. So we never really got to learn how to work as a group except for class projects where, they just shove all the work on the smart kids. So that wasn't even really a big group thing. But when I started at my role, I did not communicate very effectively as far as a mature individual showing competency in the fields that I actually have competency in. And so I started taking leadership courses at work that they offered. And so I went through several courses, Influencing Without Authority, which was mainly teaching you how to do PowerPoint presentations without people getting bored, all the way to Dale Carnegie. If you haven't heard of Dale Carnegie's Little Golden Book, go look it up. It's old fashioned, I know, but it's how a lot of people like JP Morgan and Henry Ford became great public speakers, even though they hated getting on that stage, was because they were able to look at these rules. And if you take these rules as guidelines when you're communicating and networking and trying to talk technical to the non-technical, it'll increase your efficacy in actually getting your ideas across. So I really had to change how I communicate with others at work and how I structure the delivery of that information. One of the biggest changes that I made that got me the most respect was removing my full signature and just going tack Amelia tack on all my emails.
Wow.
Small,
Okay.
subtle change, but it made me be shorter in all of my emails to the point, which made it a lot more effective when I was communicating.
That's a really good tip. So thank you for sharing that. Susan, something
Yep,
you've had
I'm,
to
I'm
change.
going with the communication thing too. Like I can read logs and I can understand technical systems, but like there have been so many times where I've been in like all hands meetings or interviews and I'm like, that went fantastic. And then later it's like, oh no, sweetie, update your resume, and things like that. So just kind of learning and understanding how other people communicate and then how I need to communicate back with them to be on the same page.
Yeah, it's almost like applying the same sort of like patterns that we're using with, analyzing attacks and analyzing all sorts of other things in our role and then applying that to the social side. I can definitely relate to all of that. So I hope our listeners are also listening. One of the last, well, we have about one or two more we can get to, but I think we're going to spend some time on this. Tiberius, you're going to take this one first. This is yes, no. So we're going to go around really fast. So Tiberius, Amelia, Susan, then Victoria. Tiberius, yes, no. Has the intro of LLMs impacted your role at all? Yes or no?
Yes.
Amelia.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Victoria.
Yes.
Okay. So now with respect to, AI and our community, what should kind of they be aware of in terms of the impact of AI that they might expect, out in a future role? Tiberius.
Yeah, I think the way AI is going right now, obviously there's a lot up in the air. I feel like AI is going to sort of be that assistant. It's going to develop into the assistant that's going to help us do our jobs better. So we already seen I was talking about Burp Suite earlier. We have Burp AI now, which unfortunately I can't use in my day job yet because of customer privacy concerns, which I hope we're going to get over at some point or find some solution for. But I think it's just, I've talked about this on several podcasts, like ChatGPT has sort of replaced Google in the sense that it's easier to explain to ChatGPT what I want and then go from there and click the links through and verify it, right? Don't just trust what ChatGPT says. You wouldn't trust what Google sent back to you either. You would always click through, hopefully. But it's replaced searching for me a lot because it understands the context of what I'm asking, and it can go off and sort of research articles and then come back with information with references for me. So already it's sort of helping me search better.
So Amelia, what should our kind of community be aware of in terms of its impact with AI?
So the biggest comparison that I'll make between AI and what we have now is how the nail gun and automated tools on the job site changed how fast we can build houses. And us as hackers are limited by the tools that are available to us. We even have a term for it, script kiddies. There's a new term for it, vibe hackers, right? People who don't necessarily know what's going on under the hood. But as more and more people are learning how to use AI, it becomes less of go use Metasploit and do this thing, and more of, hey, I'm going to install the entire build stack, compile the tools, and oh, hey, can you hook me up to a device and have me run this test for you? So I think learning how to tame that beast of the automated tooling that AI presents to us is going to be key for us preventing this thing from putting us all in pods on trees.
Susan, what do you think?
Yeah, kind of echoing that with like the communication and being able to not only communicate with the AI, but then communicating like the results and validating them, but then explaining that to management or to a client or different aspects there too.
I love that, being able to wrap in the communication piece. So like it's literally at this end and it's also at this end of the process going out. What do you think, Victoria? How is AI really going to, impact maybe their future roles in cyber?
Yeah, I would say, similar to what other folks have said, using it as a research tool is really good. Ensuring that you prompt it so that it tells you that, it got that information from these specific resources and provides you the links for those so you can go cross-check that information for validity. But I agree that it's really kind of a force multiplier for you, right? Using it as a way to make yourself more efficient as opposed to necessarily replacing an individual in a job. It helps get more done quicker. But again, the privacy concerns are huge. That's one of the things that I spend most of my time on with AI is understanding and trying to mitigate, that information disclosure possibility that exists with AI. And similar to other tools like cloud-based sharing, like Box and stuff like that when it came out, right? Is trying to prevent the kind of shadow IT and building a culture where AI is embraced as a tool and thus funded and supported appropriately with the right controls in place, instead of having users kind of go out and maverick their way through it and end up disclosing company information.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a key piece moving forward, because you don't want to go ahead and drag and drop and put everything from your company right into the AI. Wrapping up, and we do have a couple questions. One of them I think we'll kind of use maybe for our lightning questions here. So what are some good tools that'll help develop cybersecurity skills? Thank you, Michael, for that question. Susan,
Copilot.
do you want to? Oh, okay. There you go, Amelia. Anybody else? Go ahead. Shout them out.
I was going to say like try hack me, hack the box, some of those things that are just there.
Yeah, there's just so many free resources online now, like compared to when at least I was growing up. So yeah, just honestly all the resources. And I'm honest, you could literally just ask ChatGPT and it will spit out a massive list of cybersecurity skill sites that you could go to and visit and use for free. So yeah.
And for me, I would say, having some form of a home lab, right? Like when I started out in IT, that meant having a full stack of physical servers and switches and understanding all the networking and all of that. But a home lab today can be, VMware Workstation or Proxmox or Docker containers, or it's so accessible now to stand up your own environment where, you can have it disconnected from the internet and deploy malware and do malware analysis and look at how, SMB message signing and stuff like that works, right? Whereas before it was kind of in the hands of folks that had already gotten to a place where they could afford to invest in that kind of infrastructure for learning.
That's a really good point. On the topic of tools, and some of you mentioned, some other CTF sites. So kind of segueing into another question here that we have. What's your opinion on Capture the Flags as a tool for, learning about cybersecurity and keeping up your skills? That's our question.
So they're good for teaching about specific vulnerabilities. They're terrible for teaching pen testing. Because when you go for a pen test, you don't know if anything's vulnerable. It's entirely possible to test a web app and not be vulnerable to SQL injection. Whereas if you're on a CTF, you're guaranteed it's a CTF. It's vulnerable to something. So you have to sort of switch your mindset. Great for exploring a vulnerability and even sort of trying to discover a vulnerability. But one of the biggest things you need to learn if you're going from CTFs to pen testing is knowing when to stop and to stop hunting and just like, this is probably not vulnerable. That's a big thing.
Or I've gone too far and I should probably stop.
Yeah.
What about for, sort of threat hunting, Susan? What do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of important to know the CTF and what you're getting into. There's a lot for offensive and stuff, but like a lot of the things that I see in CTFs, like, a bunch of stego. And like steganography is cool and everything, but there's so many other easy ways to get data out. Like nobody's sitting there embedding things into photos to like leak those out.
I think CTFs are great for getting your feet wet and learning what's inside the house, but it's way better to build the whole house, including CTF, to learn how to attack the house. Because if you don't build it from the inside out, you're not going to understand how to do a board teardown or software bill of materials or like doing SAST against an open source project.
Yeah, I would agree. That's kind of my idea behind the home labbing thing, right? Is like you understand every level of that infrastructure. And I think that's super important. And I know you mentioned threat hunting as well. I know that Amelia does quite a bit of that. I've actually assisted her with responsible disclosure for some vulnerabilities that she's found with folks. So, it's good to do that. You can absolutely do that in your free time, just as a hobby, and really help make the world a safer place. Some companies will offer you a bounty for that. Some just say thanks, and some won't respond at all. But it's a good thing to do to continue honing your skills and kind of getting your name out there.
I just want to quickly, because we're going to have to go, we're coming up on time. I want to thank all of you for your time today. This was super valuable. I learned a lot. I hope our listeners learned a lot. And if you couldn't join us live, I hope you're able to watch this recording and you've really enjoyed it. And don't be afraid to reach out to our speakers. They were eager to share with you and reach out to you. And they have a lot of valuable things to share. So thank you for that. I'm going to take you guys off the stage for a second and let Em, if you're available, kind of wrap you up. Okay, here we go. We have some other activities here going on. So Emma, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much, Jen. And truly, thank you so very much to all our presenters. This was an extraordinary event. I learned so much, and honestly, it was just intriguing to hear your life stories and your career stories, but also just your incredible input of all the things that we're doing within the cyber community and how that connects to what you all are doing. So thank you so much for your time. And as Jen mentioned, we do have one more event coming up this week. Tomorrow is the NCL Award Ceremony at 7 p.m. Eastern. We're excited to celebrate all of the wonderful individuals and teams and coaches that have made this season such a great success. And we have John Hammond as our special guest speaker. We're thrilled to have him as well and can't wait for him to share with our community. So with that being said, thank you all for being here, for making these events possible. We hope that you had a wonderful time learning about the different cyber roles. And a big shout out to my colleague Kiwi for making the awesome introductions to our presenters. And thank you again for your time, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.